The world is square. At least my world is square, because every time they talk, I listen. And today they're talking about Dragon Quest XII, they're talking about potential Switch 2 ports, they're talking about taking some of their mobile games and turning them into console games, they're talking about when these Dragon Quest games will be coming out, and a possible remake or remaster or port of Final Fantasy 15 as well. And I want to tell you all about it, and that's totally worth a sub as you come and you join a party and you level on up with me. Thank you so much for your sub, your like, and your brand new hype. It helps me out a ton. And remember, I'm coming to you live, because if you don't meet your content creator face to face, more than likely you're watching an AI channel. So just be cognizant of what you're actually watching and consuming out there, because those AI channels are a plague. Anyway, okay, first up, we have a shareholder talking about the lengthy development of Dragon Quest XII. They said, hey, this game was first announced in 2021. What is going on? We know that you reset the project's development and turned it from like an adult, dark storyline that was potentially maybe even action-based combat into more of a lighter, more traditional Dragon Quest thing beyond dreams, going into the dream world. It looks like there might even be a tie-in to Dragon Quest IX with Angel Falls and stuff like that. They questioned the apparent shift away from the original darker tone and asked about its release window, when it can be released. Square said they explained that announcements for flagship titles have a significant impact, and they also intend to share updates only when the timing best supports marketing efforts and builds up player excitement. So that is code for, we don't have anything to say. You know, that's code for saying, hey, we have our games coming out this year, and we're only going to be releasing our AAA games, probably one per year, I would imagine, at least at this point. They had the AAA game for this year. They're putting out Final Fantasy VII Part 3 next year. That's going to be their AAA game, so probably, I would guess, that Dragon Quest XII will come out in 2028 if I was going to give any sort of guess there. The company also discussed the future of Final Fantasy remakes after a shareholder asked whether future projects could modernize visuals while retaining traditional systems rather than following the large-scale approach of the Final Fantasy VII remake. So they're saying, hey, why can't we just have like a normal remake of a Final Fantasy? Why do we have to have this large-scale Final Fantasy VII Part 3 thing going on? Can't we just have like a normal remake? And I think that Square is receptive to that. They said that they're using a market-in development strategy, which focuses on understanding the modern player expectations while balancing them with what longtime fans of the original games want. But here's the thing. The longtime fans of the original games are the ones who are going to be buying these remakes, and they're also the ones who have the money to buy these remakes, and the mythical modern audience doesn't even exist, so just saying. And then it says, each title will determine its own mechanics based on what best fits both the title itself and the current market conditions. So I think that what they're trying to say here is, if we feel like we can sell an action-based Final Fantasy VII, we'll try that if action-based games are popular at the time, but a more traditional Final Fantasy title such as Final Fantasy IX will probably remain turn-based because, you know, it's a more traditional title, and it just makes a lot more sense to keep that one turn-based, and that would also be what the fans of the original game want. Another shareholder asked whether the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake on the Switch 2 suggests that other entries, including Final Fantasy 15, could also come to the platform. So now they're talking about the Switch 2. Previously it was translated as it was the Switch 1, now they're talking about the Switch 2. They go on to say that while there are hardware limitations to faithfully recreating Final Fantasy 15 on the Switch 2, that version is not entirely impossible. And this is fascinating to me because, as far as I'm concerned, Final Fantasy 15 needs a remake. It just felt like unfinished. You know what I mean? Like, I went and I bought the Day 1 edition, because that's what I do. I go out and I buy a Day 1 edition. And whenever I buy a Day 1 edition, you know what I expect? I expect the entire game to be on that disc. Because it's the Day 1 edition. That's the ultimate edition. That's the first edition. That should be the best edition. But no, it was not. It was the worst edition of the game. And it pissed me off, and I had to go and I had to like rebuy the Windows Royal Edition and play that version of the game in order to like get all this DLC and everything. The whole game it felt like 3 different games glued together. It felt like they started like work on the PS4, and then they started some work on the Vita, and then they started some work on the PS5 or something, and they like glued them all together, and they were like, okay, here's the game. It's just like really in need of a director's cut. They need to take all that DLC that was made and properly inject it into the game. Not have it as a separate DLC story, but really integrate it faithfully into the game in areas where it makes sense. And then put in all that canceled DLC too. And put in all the content from the novel. I shouldn't have to read a freaking book to know what's going on in a video game. Like, my god, this is a lot. Just to understand what's going on, just to get like the real ending, you know what I mean? Like, that's ridiculous. Shouldn't have to do that. Like, it was a cool setting. I liked exploring the map, you know? I think that I've always said this exploration is like the most fun thing for me. I really do enjoy exploring a world map, but the problem was that there wasn't really anything to find. It was like an empty open world. Like, here and there, every once in a while, you might come across a different treasure chest or a group of mobs or something, but there wasn't like anything massively huge and substantial that like really made you want to go off the beaten path. Like, the story was fun. It was a whole little, you know, road trip thing going on, and it started off strong, and then like the midpoint hit, and you could tell that it just kind of like dropped off. Like, they kind of like stopped. They just kind of like mishmashed, kind of started pasting things together. Like, the characters just kind of like went sideways and stuff. Plot points just kind of like were abandoned. Like, it really needs to be remade. They need to reinvest in the middle part of the game and the ending part of the game, tighten it up, you know. And also, they could, because I think that it would work well, they could take the Final Fantasy VII battle system, that remake battle system, and they could put it into 15, and I think that it would really work very well. And especially if they kind of helped out magic. Like, for a lot of the game, like, there's no reason to use magic. It's just kind of like there, and it's just like, that's a shame to have magic just not really be worth it. It's pretty much warp strike, warp across the thing, bam, you know, like, that's it. And it's just like, yeah, they need to fix it. They need to do something right there. Then they go on and they talked about concerns between the long gap between announcing and releasing major games like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. They've talked about this before. And Square Enix does recognize that issue, and it says they're revisiting their marketing strategy as part of their medium-term business plan. As we know, when Yuji Horii went on live and he was talking about the Dragon Quest III remake, at the same time, he also announced the Dragon Quest I and II remake. So he kind of like spilled that years in advance. We saw the same thing with Dragon Quest XII, years in advance. And Square is realizing that that's kind of like biting them in the ass, because all the excitement has waned because we've known about this stuff for years and years and years in advance. And this is probably why they haven't announced anything at all with the Zenith trilogy. I thought for sure after they did 1, 2, 3 that they were going to do Zenith and go 4, 5, 6, but they moved on to 7. They said 7 was done first, we're going to go ahead and do it. So then, okay, 7 came out, okay, well, now it's Dragon Quest 8, now they'll do the Zenith trilogy. Nope. They put out Dragon Quest Monsters Withered World, which is coming out in December, which is a take on Dragon Quest V with Bianca and Flora and Deborah and all that kind of stuff, but it's still not the Zenith trilogy. But I do think that that will be coming, but again, they're only going to be announcing stuff within maybe 6 or so months of it actually coming out. They did that for 7 Revelation. You know, they only recently announced that, and it's coming out in the spring. They're doing it for Final Fantasy Resonance, which is coming out this fall. They only recently announced that. Withered World, they only recently announced that in May, and now that's coming out in December. So yeah, they're trying to stick to their guns. They have a plan, and they're doing their plan, and they're doing it properly, which is pretty exciting to me, I've got to say. So yeah, this is Square's future plans. This is what they've got going on. But now I wonder from you, what do you think about these plans? What do you think about Dragon Quest XII? What do you think about a potential Final Fantasy 15 port, remake, director's cut, something going on? That would be really cool. What do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments, and as always, have a good day.